Good morning. Mr. Powers talked about Sunny Hill. We also lost Joe Frazier last year. We lost Louis Cox last year. Great men who are icons in the city of Middletown. But we have other young men that are stepping up to the plate, such as Steve Hightower, who will be speaking to you today. We have men that are stepping up to the plate because they don't want that dream to die out, to fizzle out, and we're all stepping up to the plate so that we can carry on the same dream that those men had here in Middletown. Steve is not only a colleague of mine, but we grew up in Middletown in the same neighborhood. I lived on Delaware, and he lived around the corner on Garden, I think. And my sister was telling me the other day that she remembers that his mother, Elsie, had the first microwave that she had ever seen. And when she told me that, I didn't remember. She's a couple of years younger than I am, but I never remembered that. And, you know, as a youth, Steve always wanted to take charge of things. He was always out front. And even in his dad's business, you know, he was one of the bosses, you know, in the janitorial business. So some things are just in a person, instilled in a person. I remember that he went to Europe and his mother had to send money because he lost his passport. And there are just, you know, a lot of things that you remember over the years. And as we recall those things and we see him in his walk of life today, the path he's taken today with business and his commitment to, well, all the values that he has to his company, to his children, his grandchildren, and you look at this person that you grew up with and it makes you proud of that person, that you knew him and that you have grown up with him. Mark Twain once said that the really great make you feel that you too are great. And when Steve asked me to run with him on the Democratic ticket, that's the way he made me feel. He made me feel great because I had some insecurities about doing that, and he reminded me, you know, that I could handle that. And so we did. We went to Boston. And while we were in Boston, he did his normal thing with his scheduling, and he had his BlackBerry with him, and he's checking his email. And I didn't know what a BlackBerry was, but I mean, he's always on task. And he does it so cool, you know, you just really don't know what he's doing. And he's got his little machine out, and one lady said to me, "Man, he must really be important. Who is he?" But we went to see Bill Cosby and Gladys Knight, and I found out that not only is Cheryl, is she the girl in his life and has his heart, but I found out that Gladys Knight was really a girl of his for many years. And but it was great. Steve is a dynamic person. He has a lot of commitment. He's really committed to a task. He keeps his focus. Like I said, he's a man of values and principles, and he sticks to what he says he's going to do. If he says he's going to do something, he does it. He's a risk taker. Look at his business. You know, the one thing about him, there was a lady by the name of Doris Lessing who said, "Think wrongly if you please, but in all cases, think for yourself." And I wholeheartedly agree with that because that's the way Steve feels. Right now, I'm just going to introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know Steve Hightower, that I call Stevie, but he will be the next speaking voice that you'll hear.
Master of Ceremonies, members of the NAACP, Mr. President, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. Singing is the basis of the African American experience before we came to America and during our trip to America, and once we've gotten here, singing has always been a part of the African American experience. And before I get started, just by a show of hands, is there anybody in here that have anybody in their immediate family or immediate circle that's unemployed or has been unemployed over the last year? Just by a show of hands. Anybody in here? How about, is there anybody in here by a show of hands that know anyone that does not have health insurance or have lost their health care? Just by a show of hands. Is there anybody in here that knows someone in their immediate family or in their immediate circle that has someone that want to have same-sex marriage? Raise your hand by a show of hands. How did that become the #1 issue in this past election? Now, I'm not going to go there. Let's leave that alone, okay? But looking at the shades of life before me, and I think about the occasion and what I would say if I ever had the opportunity to stand before this distinguished organization and have the opportunity to speak at an NAACP dinner or an NAACP breakfast. And I'm not a preacher, but I'm a speaker, and I'm glad that at least I know that God has a word within me that I will be able to bring forth something today that hopefully is not boring or something that might leave you with a word that just might enlighten you just a little bit, and fortunately and hopefully not be too long in making that happen. I have a dream. What would Martin say about the dream today? I hear speakers preaching and, speakers and preachers trying to quote, misquoting, and wanting to quote Dr. Martin Luther King. And one of the most profound things that I think I heard Martin say was that injustice to any one of us is injustice to all of us. And as we look here at home and we see the corporations here in Middletown like AK Steel and the Middletown Journal and the Middletown Hospital and the Middletown school systems, and finally, we have a few African American executives in this city. And that's important to our community when we see executives like Edwina Blackwell Clark as publisher of the Middletown Journal. We need to have role models like that in our community. The current administration is saying that, there's plenty of jobs for those who want to work. And, some of y'all believe that we do have it good right now. And I remember my mother from Eupora, Mississippi, saying that they had it good because they had it just a little bit better than the other blacks. And even though they had segregated facilities and they had outhouses as a bathroom and they used tubs to have bathe in, and but still, her grandfather was a preacher, and they had it a little bit better than the other blacks in the city. And Harriet Tubman once said that I freed 1,000 slaves, but I could have freed 1,000 more if they only knew they were slaves. And let's take this a little bit deeper, and let's look at the dream today. And first of all, let's look at the criminal justice system and the disparity between African American males and their white counterparts, those that's in prison between the ages of 18 and 36. African Americans are 3 times more likely to be in prison. More black youth will go to prison than go to college in the year 2004. In 2000, the median income for whites was $49,000, and for African Americans it was $29,000, and for Hispanics it was $28,000. Wealth inequity, based on Edward Wolf, a leading expert on wealth in the U.S., reported that in 1976, the richest 10% of the families that own 50% of the wealth here in this country. And by 1995, they held 70% of the wealth. And in the year 2000, 20% owned 84% of the wealth. And the remaining 80% of the people only held 16% of the wealth. African Americans are twice as likely to die from lung disease and heart disease and prostate cancer. And black women make up 60% of the new AIDS cases in America. What would Martin say about the dream today? And before I give you too much, let me give you a little bit about my background and my roots and why I stand like a black walnut tree, reaching for the moon and hanging out with the stars. You know, in 1949, when Mississippi was sweltering with the heat of injustice, my father was instructed to call his 10-year-old white friend Mister, and he couldn't go around in the neighborhood, and there was always called nigger and boy, but rarely his name. And he was told that you never eyeballed a white woman, and you went to the back door of restaurants for service, and you picked cotton from sunup to sundown, and you didn't even think about drinking out of a white-only drinking fountain. It all meant trouble for you. And just like many blacks from hundreds of years before, he saw the North Star. And he followed the Natchez Trace north. And when he got to Middletown, his second day in Middletown, he got a job at Armco Steel. And for the next 40 years, he labored until he retired. And in 1957, he started a janitorial business. That was the year I was born. And that's why I say that we have been in business all of my life. 1 out of 6 million. And he had a partner. And his partner was in business as well as at home. Her name was Elsie Hightower. And together they provided an example of work effort and ethics that was passed to his 4 children with the characteristics of integrity. And as you know, it's up to us to use what we got, but God bless the child who's got his own, you know? When Udell crossed the tracks, the red line of segregation in Middletown, that changed the landscape of Middletown, and where few blacks in the country dared to buy property in the white neighborhoods. 37 years ago, a mere generation, integration, and fair housing was birthed here in Middletown. And I remember going to bed and saying goodnight to members of the Black Panther and the Middletown area NAACP. And I remember this image so vividly as I was walking up the stairs and looking back at my mother's picture window, and I saw this gentleman standing in our picture window holding a .30-30 deer rifle, vowing to protect our family from the many attacks on our property. It was during that same time in 1968 when Martin said that I had been to the mountaintop. You know, he said, I don't mind like anybody. I'd like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I just want to do God's will. You know, and he said that he's allowed me to go to the mountain, and I've looked over the mountain and I've seen the promised land. He said, I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And the next day he was gunned down. People, we don't know what is meant by courage. Courage is something that you have to have deep inside you. Courage that, unfortunately, many of our youth will never, ever know, but they must be told. Not courage to do something stupid or to put yourself in risk of lawlessness, but courage to stand when you know it's right. And it was the late state representative C.J. McGlynn that first told me that if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. courage. And today, Hightower's Petroleum Company, in 3 generations of a family business, we have the ability to sell fuel in every state in the United States and every county in the United States. And our customer base is Fortune 100 companies, and our supply chain is Fortune 100 companies. And we have provided an alternative to the marketplace of big oil and being responsive and being able to deliver products in a timely and efficient manner in an industry that controls world economies. And we have 4 companies growing globally. And you know, that's when character and courage and compassion and tenacity meets opportunity and provides a formula for success. And I always said that if you know how to do business, somebody in this world will do business with you. And you need to learn how to do business. America, what a beautiful country. Built by liberals with a liberal platform and becoming a melting pot of all of God's children, black men and white men and Jews and Gentiles and Protestants and Catholics and Arabs and Muslims and islanders and on and on and on. We have to stop preaching hate at other religions and other cultures. You know, we don't have to adopt or accept or become someone else, but God would want you to be respectful and tolerant of others. Many of our founding fathers in 1776, they said that this country was built on Christian principles, and they constructed this country based on godliness. And African Americans during that time were not even recognized as human beings. African Americans were terrorized and raped and enslaved in 1776. And since 1776, the African American experience is looking for the godliness and the compassion that we know in America today. And what would Martin say about the dream today? And having the opportunity to create my American dream, and I ask, where are my people? And understanding when I say, where are my people, I'm not discounting my human race, or I'm not discounting my godly brothers and sisters from all races, but I say my people because the African American race is seeking self-empowerment. We are starving for economic parity. More than any race in the world, we need self-empowerment and the knowledge and reinforced affirmation that we can achieve beyond anyone's dreams. Greatness and magnificent accomplishment can be ours. You know, and I speak all over the country, and I hear speakers speaking, and unless they have a passion to give the understanding of service and the wisdom of patience, and along with the will and tenacity to help others succeed, there is no power. We must offer an alternative to working daily too long for too little and dying too early because we can't afford preventive health care, because we can't afford health care insurance, and retirees being faced with a loss of their retirement benefits because the corporations are manipulating legacy costs, and our elderly having to literally break their medicine in half because they can't afford and have to make a decision between taking their medicine or eating today. A community starving for treatment and education instead of jails and prisons. Until we change our community, until we give back those things that we have gone out here and learned, we will continue to get what we've been getting, because ain't nobody gonna give you nothing. And I ask, what would Martin say about the dream today? Power is in the name of Jesus. Power is in knowledge, and we need to keep the pressure on our school systems to educate our children, not some of them, but all of them. And we need to communicate to our local businesses to provide opportunities for our youth. Buy Middletown, educate Middletown, then hire Middletown. We know what local means, and Dayton and Cincinnati is not local. You know, if you want to have those types of programs with good intentions, what you have to have is best practices to have best results. And that's just a life's lesson. Our youth excel all over the country. Middletown, give our youth a reason to call Middletown home. And we need to have the courage to tell administrations and political parties and corporations that we matter too, you know? Yes, our streets need snow removal just like the other communities. And it's okay to have new single-family dwellings in all the communities, not just in some. And it's, you know, we need to know that some of the problems that's in Oneida and in Mayfield are similar to the problems that we have right here in the South End. But guess what? The rest of the community have some of the same problems too. So now that we know how to ask the questions in a way that's politically and morally correct, there's no reason why we should not be asking questions. And no longer do we have to wait on the preachers. And, you know, you guys do what you do. But today we have black professionals and black businesses that can speak the same language as our council people can speak. And we can do deals at city council and corporate boardrooms with the same level of intelligence and the same level of competence as they possess. And, you know, I believe that Martin would have something to say about the dream today. And when we're talking about networking and we're talking about the constitution of relationship of mutuality for the whole community, Middletown's success is dependent on a symbiotic relationship. We need you, and you need us. We are bound. We are tied together in an inescapable bond of mutuality, tied to a single garment of destiny, and that suggests that you and I cannot be all that we can be until everybody else in this community is all that they can be. And, you know, the reality is that you and I are part of a single lung, and you need to come into who you are. You need to come into your stature, and you need to stop trying to be somebody else, but be all that you can be. And God has his purpose for you, and you are the first and only example, a copy of God's existence on earth, and ain't nobody else like you. And but if you don't acknowledge who you are, that unique object that God placed will just go to waste. Can you imagine if Dr. King was a regular old Negro Baptist preacher? What if the only thing Dr. King wanted was a big congregation and a big car and have a bunch of money and a nice annual love offering? And, you know, I'm not mad at that, but there's more to life than that. And there's more to preaching than that. It's more than having just a nice automobile and a big car. What if Dr. King was a scared Negro? What if he was just a run-of-the-mill Negro, afraid to challenge white supremacy and economic inequality and social injustice? Maybe if he had gotten that PhD from Harvard and accumulated wealth and had expanded his opportunity to have tunnel vision as to the human possibility, as opposed to saying what Ronald Leary called the battering rams in a bush of historical necessity that thrust him to his destiny. What if Martin failed to be Martin Luther King Jr.? Some might say that God would have sent another ram in the bush, and it's possible someone else might have been present, but the reality is, it wouldn't have been Martin Luther King Jr., you know, and we don't know what we would have missed. But we know in the aftermath, we know that King had his own rhythm, and in his death, he had his own style, and he had his own groove, and we can't replace that with something else, because whatever else there is, that is what it was supposed to be. And God had something in particular in mind for Dr. Martin Luther King, and God has something in particular in mind for you. And that means that you have to have the dignity of discipline, the deep into the resources of your imagination and to construct an image that God has intended for you. And you are empowered to be whosoever you want to be, and you possess an infinite amount of possibilities for success. And that's important, brothers and sisters, because we got so many folk out there that ain't nothing but Xerox copies and imitations and facsimiles and third-rate copies. And that's why I tell folks, I can't be nobody else. I am who I am. And I don't have to define myself according to the limitless test, the alternative vision of someone else's view as to who I am. I have the infinite reach of a human being embodied by the infinite potential of God. I am who I am. And I've been working on this for a minute now, okay? You know, this is a lifelong project, and I'm still in process, and I got new possibilities locked inside me, and every day I go deeper and I go wider, and I'm looking for something more possible than anything that has ever been revealed to me. I am a mystery to me. So when you surrender yourself totally and completely to a power higher than you, then God owns you in a very special way. Have you ever done something and said, I didn't know I could do something like that, or I didn't know I could say something like that, or I didn't know I could feel like that, Because if you can yield the nerve center of your consent to God, yield the nerve center of your consent to God, then you become a sponge of infinite possibilities, and you are a local site for the internal. And what that means is that your agenda is deeper than what any country can dictate, deeper than what your community can expect, and deeper than what any individual can command. And you are a project of infinite evolution and internal expansion focused on space and time, So don't get twisted by what you see here. I'm bigger than what I appear to be. And you be afraid to tell somebody that you are bigger than what you appear to be. We need to practice. We need to practice competence. We can't be just as good. We got to be better, Isn't that what King would have wanted? We need to quit thinking small and build and buy big businesses and build integrity into our daily lives. Because when you build integrity into your daily life, you can use someone else's money to reach your dreams, And go beyond. Go beyond the corner drugstore, the corner store on the market, and the one-man construction company, joint venture, partner, make acquisitions, do deals, get a piece of the rock, persevere, and make it happen. It took me 10 years to make any money in the petroleum business. Let it take whatever it takes. Just persevere. Don't quit, and you will succeed. Martin, we're making dreams. Do you know there were 6 million possibilities that could have been Steve Hightower? 6 million possibilities that was unleashed when my father admitted his spermaceti into my mother's uterus, and 6 million possibilities were off, and 6 million fledgling sperm cells was moving through the universe looking for the egg to be communicated with. And as soon as they hit, 1 million got wiped out right away because they couldn't take the environment that was so toxic and so testing that my mother was unable to be compassionate and had to challenge the sperm in the beginning. So 6 million came out and 1 million was wiped out right away. And then the other 5 million start swimming upstream, and they start swimming and they was looking for the egg coming because they understand that this was a race for survival, and there's 6 million here and only one could become Steve Hightower. Which one is going to become Steve? Steve, and because they're looking for the goal and the objective that we got to get to. So thousands begin to die because they can't take the pressure, they can't take the stress, they can't take the hardship, they can't survive the opposition that is in the environment. So they begin to spot the egg in the distance. They begin to say, we're almost there. We're almost there. We're almost to victory. And now we're down to 100. And 100 has began to head for the egg. And the egg is looking so inviting and so enticing that it's just waiting to be penetrated by what it needs to be transformed and transmitted to become a neophyte that is going to become the whole thing, that is going to become Steve Hightower. And it wants to be a cycle ready to grow in the universal process. The purpose is already destined. And out of nearly 6 million possibilities, all that's left is 100 strong possibilities. And those who will win the marathon is moving toward the objective. And they are there and they begin to hit the egg, but they get knocked out because the head is not hard enough to penetrate the egg, And then 10 more get to it, but they begin to succumb to the chemical process that they need to get through the shell of the egg. Because the shell of the egg gets discerning and it gets discriminating, and the shell of the egg ain't gonna just let any old mess get through, So only one can become Steve, and when that one gets through, the shell of the egg is closed. And nobody else can get in. And all the other possibilities fall to the side. And guess who that one was? That was Steve Hightower. So out of 5,999,999 possibilities, I am the one out of 6 million that made it through. And if you want to know if I can do what I say I can do, you're darn skippy. You can't stop me no way you try. I might be ugly, but I'm not as ugly as the 5,999,900 that didn't make it. I might be dumb, but I'm not as dumb as the 5,999 that didn't make it. I might be unmotivated, but I'm not as unmotivated as the 5,999 that didn't make it. I am the one who is the one, and you are too. Peace.
Brother Udell, Mother Elsie, that's your boy. Give Brother Steve Hightower another great hand. Did he do a great job? Were you challenged, invigorated? Wow. I don't even know if that's in Webster's dictionary, but wow. Let me say this before I introduce our president. This is the second time I said it to Steve, that he has amazed me in less than 12 months. There was a GOTV rally at the community center that amazed me in terms of him pulling that together and all of us there and being excited about getting out to vote. And that was major. Your speaking today, Steve, was major. For all speaking engagements, please see me, and I will. I'm serious. Y'all playing around.